is that everybody has an opinion, myself included. But what's the result? Where are we
Mhm.
going with this? How does
Absolutely.
this conversation bring us closer together to loving each other and getting back
Absolutely.
to what love is? Like let's invite love back into this equation. Nobody needs to be told what to do. I'm on Instagram live right now and I see the comments and somebody says, "Well, nobody wants a woman who doesn't listen." That is not my target audience. Person is not my target audience. In fact, they shouldn't even be here because nobody wants a woman who doesn't listen. But guess what? Women don't want men who don't listen either.
Absolutely.
Right.
We want submission is about respect. It's not about me sitting down and listening to you, big boss. I don't want to be laying next to somebody that I am afraid of, that I can't communicate a thought or an opinion to, or I'd be accused of being too masculine or being unagreeable or disagreeable, whatever the right term is. That's not sexy to me. That doesn't
About
make me
that.
want to get undressed and give
Okay.
you my body and
Because that's
serve
like
you in that
sleeping with
way.
your daddy. That's
That's
and
like
not the
sleeping
right kind
with
of
a parent.
daddy.
I'm not a child. This is
Right.
mutual respect. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to argue about submission with me because I am eager to please you. I am eager to agree with you. I trust you.
Absolutely.
I chose you. So that means that we are aligned in values. We're aligned somewhere. I don't want to argue with you. We're always on the same page. I love you. I honor you. I respect you.
Yeah.
We don't have to ask questions to qualify my submission because real men understand how to pick women that are on the same page, and real women understand how to pick men that are on the same page. So these silly debates just don't even happen in relationships that are aligned appropriately.
For
And
sure.
that I believe, like you said too, that are and that maturity. I think it's also a an aspect of maturity to understand. It's like going to work and like if you go to a business and you see young people and they're given direction and they are, they're refusing to follow whatever that direction is and they're rebellious and things like that, you automatically think like, okay, they're not mature. Like there's something that there's a disconnect for you to understand that you're at a place of work, you have a boss, they're going to take, or people who you understand whatever these things are that are already outlined. So my point is it's mature. We'll be looking at a person like, well, that person, they obviously is some issue of maturity. So
Yeah.
in the same regard, when it comes to relationships that are mature, I feel the same. These are not conversations, but I think too often people are trying to find a uniform idea to apply to every single person, and that's not it. That was never ever, I don't believe, God's intention at all. And
Yeah.
so, and we begin to fail because too often we're trying to fit in other people's mold of what they feel like relationships should be and look like, and getting approval, right? Because you're
Yeah.
like, well, if this person doesn't agree, well, if she said this, I gotta align with that. And if this person sees from the outside looking in, and now they're gonna judge, how about you get to do what works for your household and your relationship, and I get to do what works for my household and relationship. And you get to do it with the idea and experience that you have. Some people are limited in their experience and exposure. Some people, even having biblical references, some people got misinterpretation of the word. And you get to do relationship in the context of your misinterpreted word. If that's how you want to rock, go with it.
Yeah. And you said you used a word, maturity, and it really encompasses a lot. There's so much immaturity, right? There's just so much immaturity present in relationships today. And that probably has been since the beginning of time. But when I think of immaturity in a relationship, I am thinking about people who are leading, they're pickers, whatever they're utilizing to pick in the first place. Your picker is off. You need to recalibrate your picker. And we are looking at so many superficial qualities. I have been guilty of it. Like many, many years ago, I have been guilty of, I need to get the super fine guy and he's got to be this, that, and the other, and all the things. And you realize that as you start to get older, or as you start to get
Absolutely.
wiser, or as you start to become more ambitious, and you need people who are actually resourceful, you need people who are actually loyal, you need people who are actually interested in you, you need people who are actually capable and qualified. Like, none of those things have a height attached to it. They don't have a look
Agreed.
attached to it, right? And so we have to do a better job at the initial due diligence before you choose a partner. Have you even taken time to identify what you value most, right?
Absolutely.
Do you value integrity? Do you value someone who is incredibly timely and punctual? Do you value honesty? Do you value someone who's resourceful? Do you value someone who can get their hands dirty and fix things? And if we start doing due diligence and stop hopping quickly into what we believe to be love, which usually isn't love, it's usually more of an infatuation. If we actually stop to just build a friendship with people, if we actually stop jumping into bed with people very early and uh, multiplying emotions too quickly, we can actually sit and have reasonable conversations with other people and qualify them on our own. Well, here are my 5 to 7 core values.
Yep.
Does this person align with value number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? You got 80% of your core values. Core values are going to be your non-negotiables, right? There's a difference between core values and wants and desires. Core
Agreed.
values are the things that you are inflexible on. I want a faithful partner. I want a partner who operates in integrity. I want a partner who is submitted to God and who loves God, because if you love God, then you understand how to love me. Like, those are the non-negotiables. And I don't know a lot of people who have core values figured out. So that's number one, right? That's like the number one thing that I've learned now to use to be my picker. But then number two is, you actually do have a right to like what you like. We've got core values, these are the needs, but now you can like what you like. So I tell people, write out a list of what the experience with your future wife or the experience with your future husband is. What do you want that experience to be? So I did a podcast episode with someone, and I talked about having a list of 92 things, right? 92 things. And the internet went crazy until I started to detail what those 92 things are. And the 92 things is really a deeper elaboration on the core values that I've set, right? So, one of those things are one of the values that I value is friendship. And so on that list of 92 things, it is, my husband enjoys talking to me about everything. My husband feels safe coming to me and knowing that we're going to have a result and there's not any judgment. My husband is excited to come home to me every single day, because I understand the opposite. I know that there are people who sit in their cars for hours
I
dreading
know.
walking into the house. I know that there are people who dread hanging out with their significant other's friends, or bringing their significant other around their friends. Well, that's a core value violation of mine. And I can either choose to honor that, or I can choose to ignore it. And usually when you ignore a core value, not the superficial stuff, but a core value, that's when you're in your home debating over small things, because the relationship just didn't make sense in the first place.
Agreed.
Mhm. This is so good. Donnie, who inspired you to become the woman you are today?
It's much less of a who and more about my journey, just overall. My mom was my very first mentor ever, right? She was the very first person that I admired. Um, I grew up in a two-parent household, right? I grew up in a two-parent household with my mom and my stepfather, who has been in my life since I was like 3 or 4 years old to present time. So I got to see an example of, what I did want and what I don't want in a relationship. But I grew up in unconditional love, period. Whether there were things that I admired about my parents' relationship or did not align with me, I grew up in unconditional love. And that opened the door for me to really desire that for myself, to be that, to be that person in the relationship. I certainly learned my ambition and loyalty. I believe I got my intelligence. It started right in my own household. But then, as you grow up and you go throughout life, you start to pick up your own experiences. You start to make your own mistakes. You start to make your own friends. You start to pick up influences that your parents would never choose for you. And I believe that I have been inspired by all of the rights and all of the wrongs that I have gone through. The mistakes have inspired me to be better. I'm constantly in a season of becoming every single day. Like I will never say I am who I am supposed to be, right? I am on the track that I am supposed to be on consistently, but I am constantly becoming. And that's come from human examples, experiences. I read a lot of books. I watch a lot of documentaries. I observe a lot of people. Like we can really figure this out just by paying attention. A
Agreed.
lot of people living lives that I do not desire to live. So when I see that, I do the opposite. When I see
Absolutely.
that, I try to understand, like, ooh, what is it about that dynamic that I don't find desirable? And then I reverse engineer what maybe got people to that point, and I do my very best. I don't live a perfect life, right? I understand that everybody's not going to be aligned with the way that I think, and that's okay. You're just not my target audience, and
Mhm.
that is okay.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
For sure. I agree. Because I was watching you and David one day, and you said something that stuck with me. And I think you gave the credit to somebody, but you said you were born looking like your parents and die looking like your decisions.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're all born looking like our parents, but we will
Mhm.
die looking like our decisions. And what that means is when we are born into this world, it is up to our parents to instill our very first set of beliefs into us, right? We are born into whatever their financial status is. We live in whatever environment they provide for us. We live our lives, we do based on whatever decisions they choose for us. That's just how it works here, right? But as you get older, as you get more experience, as you develop more freedom, you start to now have the ability to make your own choices, right? You now have the right to choose. And you can stay a product of whatever you were born into. If that was great, good for you, multiply that. But if you grew up, if you were born into conditions that you don't desire for yourself, you can't continue to say, well, I was raised in these projects and I went through this trauma. We're all connected to some type of trauma. We've all gone through things. And there's a story that has always stuck with me about two brothers who grew up in a household with their parents where
Absolutely.
the mother was abused by the father. The father was an alcoholic, he was very violent, and he abused the mom in front of these two brothers. These two brothers would go on, they would grow up, they would become adults who made their own decisions. And one day they were interviewed. The one brother was, I believe, homeless. He was an alcoholic and
Yep.
he had been abusive in his own relationships. And the interviewer asked that brother, why do you think you became the exact thing that your father was? And he said, well, I mean, I grew up in a house watching my dad beat my mom. I was born into this. I am this way because that's the example that my dad set for me. And then they asked the other brother the very same question. Well, you are a great spouse. You're honorable. You don't touch alcohol. You've never raised your hand to your spouse. Growing up in an abusive household, how did you beat that odd? And that brother said, I lived my life based on the example that my dad set for me. I saw him hurt my mom. I saw him beat my mom. I saw him drink himself into a stupor. And because I saw that, I decided that that's not what I want to be. So we all have experienced some
Absolutely.
very similar traumas. We get to decide what we do with those experiences. We get to decide what that hurt ends up meaning to us, what that ends up meaning to us, what that trauma ends up meaning to us. Sure, it was terrible. We know it was terrible. I sympathize, I empathize. I am not invalidating what happened to any person. But there is a time where we have to choose what it's going to mean to us. We can let it destroy and kill us, or we can say, you know what, this happened, and I want to leverage that experience so that I can save somebody from save someone from it happening to them, or I want to leverage this experience and move on past it so that my life doesn't equate to my trauma. We can't have our ceiling for our life be associated directly to our trauma.
Right.
Imagine saying that I grew up in poverty in the projects and had nothing. And because that's what your experience is, you equate that to you can't be anything. So you've placed trauma as your ceiling, and no matter how hard you work, no matter how hard you fight, you will only go as high as your trauma will allow you to go. No, no, I am a person instead that has experienced several traumas, some that I earned through my own self-infliction and some that I never deserved to experience. But I refuse to be a person who is held hostage by the ceiling of my trauma. I'm going to break through it and I am going to live and max out on this life experience. Like, this is our life experience. When you think about it, like, this is an experience that God has blessed you with. Max out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is so good.
And I think sometimes we don't know what to do with choice. The freedom of decision is a very powerful thing. But I think that for some people, it's easier to just lean into replicating other people's choices than us breaking through and making decisions of our own. And understand completely, what you're saying around we all have those stories. I don't think for a moment that, and I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding that everything you go through, God wants you to go through, because that's not true. There's a reality that there is evil and there is bad in the world, and people have choices. And so some people choose to align with that. So, to anybody that's dealing with anything, whether it's relationship related, whether it's personal, and having my own set of, I mean, a long list of just even in my reality, like 2024, I lost so many people. Having a family where my mother is a sibling of 16, my siblings I'm one of 8. It's so many people, but all those people mean a lot of loss. But we get to decide how we're going to manage all of these unfortunate experiences that we don't get to always bypass. And
Yeah.
I believe in prayer, but we
Mhm.
don't get to always pray away. And that's another point of maturity, because I know that my kids would want to have every good, perfect experience there was. They would never want to have to be responsible to do anything that develops them personally, whether it's cleaning up. They wouldn't choose that. But
Yeah.
in adulting and becoming mature, we understand that that is the beauty of discipline, is we are moving beyond what we feel. We're not allowing our emotions to just lead us and guide us to our decision making. So it goes back to when you were talking about just again understanding leadership and these various things. We get to decide how we're going to, you get to have feelings, but you get to decide if you're going to allow your feelings to be your leader, and your feelings get to have a place. But then at some point, they need to not be the ruler of every decision you make. And they will definitely, let me tell you something. If you give them the room, they will wear you out. So you don't have to, but you don't have to. So I think it's wonderful to know that we have another choice. That I hear that story all the time. And I think about that because I'm one of 8 who grew up in a home where at one point my dad abused my mother and things like that. And it could make a person be like, in some cases, someone would be like, well, why would, how do you believe in love? I'm divorced. And because I get to decide, I get to lean into still having hope and believing love. And I saw my parents love each other. And then I saw them also struggle with maturity too, as I know it from this point of view. As a child, you don't know. But as an older person who also got to ask them questions, we get to decide. Like, I know that I want relationship, but I know that it's not self-seeking, which means that it's not always about us. And too many times the conversation is led with so much I, that two can't become one if you are the one by yourself.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Love it. I wanted to take a quick break for our sponsor from Love Fearlessly Intimacy Card Deck. This is a deck that my wife and I created, put our heads together after 7 years of marriage. I was previously married. Just everything that we learned about relationships, and decided to come up with some intimacy cards that I believe help will get you to know your significant other or your spouse better in a more intimate way. Donnie, so I want to pull a card from the deck, and I want to ask you one question from the deck.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, we go. Yeah, this is the safe one. Who provided a safe space for your feelings in childhood?
Everybody.
Mm,
Thankfully, I grew up, my childhood was awesome. It wasn't perfect, but it was awesome. And everybody who was responsible, the community that my mom placed me in,
mm,
from my great aunts to my cousins and my godparents, even her friends, everybody was a safe space for me. I could go to any of them and have a tough conversation. I could confide in anybody. And I will say that my mom and dad did a great job at making sure that I was supported, that I was looked after. I'm an only child. And my mom is an only child, and she actually lost her mother when when she was pregnant with me. She lost her mom 3 months before I was born,
Mm,
right at the age of 22 years old. And I believe that impacted my mom in such a traumatic way that when she lost her mom was her everything, and she didn't feel like she had anybody. Who's going to help me now? Who do I go to now? Who do I ask questions to
yeah,
now? Who's going to help me become an adult? Who's going to help give me this advice to navigate this marriage that I'm in and this child that I have coming? She lost that so unexpectedly. And I believe that that stuck with her in a way where she said, my daughter will be different. I am going to make sure I build a community around her, because out of fear and out of maturity, she said, if anything ever happens to me, she will not be left alone. She will have a strong community of people who look after her, who I trust to advise her and counsel her, and who will take care of her and provide for her. And that's what I had as a child.
awesome.
mm. I love that. That's
What a
good.
blessing.
Yeah, for
Amen.
sure.
I mean, I appreciate community. My mother having 8 kids and 15 siblings, community came standard. So she as well
Mm,
Yeah.
constantly made sure. I mean, and I have community everywhere
Hmm.
because that's something that I saw my mom also create. So I feel the same way. Community is a beautiful thing, but it's a necessity. I don't know how people do in life without community.
yeah.
Yeah, it's an absolute necessity. They're not doing in life without community. They're just
Agreed.
kind of forging through. It's very difficult to do anything successfully by yourself forever, right?
Yes.
You need people, you need
Yeah.
friends, you need romantic relationships, maybe, or companionship, whatever
Yeah.
you choose for yourself. And I'm not suggesting everybody needs to get married and have a ton of friends, but you need people around you. That's how we were
Yes.
designed to do life since the beginning of life.
Mm,
Yeah.
for sure. I
Agreed.
love it because I mean, even with me and Aquila, we got together and
Listen.
podcast on another level now.
Yeah,
Listen.
Couldn't do it by myself.
for sure. For sure.
Love it. I kind of want to jump into some of these relationship questions real quick, Donnie, before I let you go. Uh, your thoughts. When it comes to men, do you think men are born leaders or do you think they're made?
Do I think they're born leaders or do I think they're made? I think everybody is born with the ability to lead, but I think uh, men or whoever are developed into leaders by the things that they learn in their experiences. Like, you have to go through some things. You have to go through some obstacles and some challenges. You have to successfully solve some problems, right? In order to be a leader, you have to demonstrate your resourcefulness, and those things are not automatic. So your life's experiences determines your ability to lead, your training, your mentorship. Are you being led by anybody? Is there anybody who leads you? Are you
Absolutely.
strong enough to submit to anybody else's leadership? Like, all of those things make a difference in the quality of your leadership. So definitely developed.
Hmm. I agree.
I
Yeah,
agree.
because I tell people, even to the guys that I talk to, who's discipling you?
Yeah.
You know, are you able to submit to another man's vision before you end up taking your own vision? And even with women too, I'm like, hey, make sure that this guy know how to submit himself.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I want to honor your time. I want to ask this last question. What final piece of advice would you give to women who are looking for a man with strong leadership qualities?
Huh. What advice would I give to women who are looking for men with strong leadership qualities?
Or a man, in going into marriage, looking for marriage.
Hmm. What advice would I give to a woman who's looking for a man with strong leadership qualities? I would definitely advise